Next, we're going to talk about scale. Now, large works can be very impressive. They can be monumental. They can be things that just take your breath away. But at the same time, just because it's big doesn't make it good. Small works may be small and diminutive at times, but a large work, if it has bad form, the large scale, monumental attitude of it doesn't help. Claes Oldenburg is a Scandinavian/American artist, and I love some of his works. This is one of my favorites. Now, this is a clothespin. You can see the scale by the size of the bicyclist in the back. And so here we have a clothespin that is pinching a piece of the earth. Here we have a garden trowel, and it's, tip is to the grass. Of course, there's a huge foundation underneath it to keep it in place, but its scale is what's impressive. So he has taken common objects and put them in a space which it doesn't really fit. So this is a piece in Germany, and it's a pickaxe, and there's a huge foundation underneath it to support this very large object. Now, this is another work by Frank Stella. We saw some of these works a little bit earlier, but this really tells you the scale. It's being installed in a museum, and you can see they had to bring a crane in just to bring in that piece of canvas. These are works by Mark Rothko, very large works. Once again, you can see the visitor in the gallery. And so what makes these impressive is his interplay with color, but also their scale. Robert Motherwell. Now you can see these are the maquettes that he did, the small paintings and drawings, trying to figure out what he was going to do. He worked out the composition on a small scale, and then he stretched his canvases. He actually would paint his canvases on the floor, and then they were stretched on frames later. Now this is a work that's in our own backyard. This is in the Great Salt Lake. This is called Spiral Jetty by Robert Smithson. He brought all this material in with tractors and dump trucks and created this spiral jetty that would block the water and different things. I always thought it was very thick and deep. Turns out that it's only about a foot high. But anyway, for years it was underwater, and then the water receded. The first time I saw it, it was about at this level, and the second time I saw it, the water level was about a half mile out. There it is with the water level being way out in the Great Salt Lake, and so these are just puddles left from rain and such. The next element of design that we want to talk about is contrast. Now, contrast can be a variety of things. It can be a contrast in color, a contrast in value, a contrast in scale. All these things can add to a strong focal point or help delineate midground from background. For instance, contrast in scale from front, midground to background can help the eye see distance. Let's look at some images dealing with contrast. Now, this is a work by Andy Warhol, multiple images of John Lennon. If we look at it, there's no difference in scale. Each image is the same size. The repetition is all even. What makes it different is the contrast in color. And so the image in the middle, which is black and white but outlined in red, is a focal point. That image is the strongest, and it draws our eye into the middle. This is a work by Marc Chagall. Now, the contrast here is the images. You've got the Eiffel Tower, which is not only in human form, but look at the scale between it and the chicken. And so that's one of the things that makes this a non-object or an objective abstract. Excuse me. Mark Rothko, very large work, contrasting colors. These are blue and orange. Those are actually complementary colors. And so the contrast there is once again in color. M.C. Escher. Now he created this composition where there is absolutely no negative space. Everything is positive. You either have the light riders moving to the left or the dark riders moving to the right. And each one fits into the other one. So there's absolutely no negative space. So the contrast is not in the shape. The contrast is in the color to keep the images separate. This is a work by Robert Motherwell. Very large. The contrast is in these shapes. You've got a rhythm of bars and spheres, bars and spheres, bars and spheres. You've got a little bit of contrast in color, but it's mostly graphic black and white with a little bit of red and ochre to give it the contrast. And so the contrast here is mainly in the white and black balance of value. Okay, the last element of design we're going to talk about is color. Now, the relationship of hues, different colors, gives the opportunity to create a warm environment or a cool environment. It can also help to unify a composition. Being able to understand the elements of a color wheel gives you the opportunity to unify a composition by using related colors, or you can create contrast by also adding the addition of the complementary color. Once again, we turn to Andy Warhol with one of his prints. This is called Zebra. As we look at it, no one would ever guess that a zebra would be this color, but it makes a wonderful composition. You've got the reds, the blues, the purples, the yellows, and there's a rhythm that draws your eye back and forth. It's wonderful. Now, Monet did a whole series of paintings, and they all deal with color, because what he was doing is painting the same building, a cathedral, over and over again in different light, in different seasons. And so depending on the colors he used, you get a totally different feeling for the painting. This is probably in the afternoon, fairly bright. This is very cool. Mornings, maybe winter. This one's a little brighter. Once again, probably late afternoon, evening. Very bright, a lot of sun. So every one of these paintings, same subject matter, but color gives them each a different mood and feeling. This is a work by Georgia O'Keeffe. And so it's yellow hibiscus. Your eye follows this right into the center of the flower. Beautiful piece. And also look where the focal point is. Clear over to the side and down low. Look how important this negative space is right there with the black. A work by Gustav Klimt. This is called Poppy Meadow. And so repetition of all the different colors of the poppies. It's very unified as far as the texture and the pattern. Very unified as far as the colors. It makes it look very flat in a lot of ways because the colors are so unified. But the colors are the most important part of the composition. This is actually called Harmony in Red, a work by Matisse. It's interesting that the tabletop, the tablecloth, and the wallpaper are all the same. He didn't add any shadows, so you can't really tell where the table turns. So you've got this very cool green view out the window. Everything inside of the interior is very warm, very bright. This is a piece by Paul Gauguin. He painted it when he was working in Normandy. northern France. It's called the Yellow Christ. And if you look at it, it's unified because the figure, the fields, everything is in the yellow and orange tones. So this concludes the presentation on the elements of design. Now, if you go online, you can find different lists, many lists, about the elements, the principles of design. I think this incorporates all of them in fairly well. If you learn these principles, it will help you in your designing, in your compositions, and in your decision making, and it will really help you when you're working on your different projects.